Hey everyone, Kaitlin here. Thanks for watching another episode of Baldwin Breakdowns, where we're looking at big concepts, big ideas, and lots of big feelings in 10 minutes or less. And this week's episode's topic is anxious or insecure attachment. So in the poll that I put up earlier this week, there was a huge influx of votes for this one in particular. And I know that when I talked about attachment styles previously, I did another Baldwin breakdowns video of all 4 styles that I will link somewhere, or I'll put it in the episode description. I don't know where it shows up, but I know that people really connected with like the anxious attachment piece, and sometimes this is the style that can create the most distress. So I'm going to go into this particular attachment style in more detail in this video. So anxious attachment, there's a lot of different names for it. In different attachment-based theories, it's called different things. So sometimes it's anxious attachment or insecure attachment or preoccupied attachment. All of them mean the same thing. They're all referring to the same attachment style. For information about what can create insecure attachment or anxious attachment, I will also link my video that I did, I think 2 or 3 weeks back, on attachment injuries. And so this I talked about like different things that can happen in childhood or even in adult relationships that can kind of create this lack of secure attachment. But in this one, I also wanted to talk through or go through the attachment system and how it can get activated for anxious or insecurely attached people. And then I also wanted to go into a bit more detail about how this shows up in relationships. And what I want to make really clear too is that anxious attachment we usually refer to in the sense of romantic relationships. So we'll talk about it in, dating, marriage, whatever. But this type of attachment and any type of attachment can show up in any relationship. So this can show up in our friendships, it can show up with our parents or caregivers. I know that for me, in the tests or the assessments that I've done for my own attachment styles, I vary widely depending on that type of relationship. So I lean much more to this anxious, insecure, preoccupied attachment in my romantic relationships, but with my mom or with my dad or with my friends, I'm in very different places. So yeah, I just want to make that point that this can relate to any type of relationship, and also that we have the capacity to change our attachment style over time. It's not quick, it's not seamless, but we do have the ability to make those changes. So I'm going to go through the attachment system, and this is based on a larger model that I probably should have referenced in this. Can't remember the people's names, but I'll include it as the reference in this episode description. But I also drafted it from this book, Attached, which I've probably referenced before in other videos. Best book you'll ever get if you're wanting to learn more about your own attachment style, because it's very user-friendly. But this talks about, for the anxious or insecurely attached people, how we go through this system, kind of a sequence of events that can create or amplify distress that we might feel. And so this is a very simplified version because there's only so much that I could fit in this single kind of snapshot. But basically, in any situation, let's say we start with a possible threat. And so a very common one, or an easy one to use as an example, is if your romantic partner doesn't text you back. So let's say you've sent them maybe an important question or one that you're not sure how they're going to respond to it, and they haven't responded yet. So that is kind of the sign of a threat. In that situation, if your partner responds back right away, then that threat is like, oh, okay, we're good, we're fine. And your activations, or your attachment system, is no longer activated, or it's not going to be activated. If you've sent that text and it's been a couple hours and your partner hasn't responded, then we go into that second stage of activating the attachment system. So this is when our body starts to feel a certain level of distress. There isn't a ton of consensus, or maybe I just didn't find the particular research about what specific physical areas of our body correlate with this attachment system. It makes sense logically that it would include our nervous system, like our sympathetic nervous system, and parts of our brain, including like our emotional center, the amygdala, as well as some different areas in our prefrontal cortex that have to do with decision making. But anyways, regardless, there's this possible threat. We kind of feel like it is more of a threat because our partner hasn't responded. Then our attachment system, holy moly, gets activated. What we do in response to that is we say, okay, I'm feeling this distress. I want to soothe and ease that distress, so I'm going to seek proximity to my partner. So in this exact example, I may text my partner again, or maybe I will call them. And this is another situation where it can go one of two ways. If my partner, answers the call or texts me back, then okay, I'm good. That threat is resolved, the distress is lowered, and we can go back to functioning normally. If my partner doesn't respond or declines the text, or maybe it goes straight to voicemail, then we move down into the danger zone. And so this is where we are in complete distress. So it's no longer like the possibility of or kind of an option of distress. It's like, oh no, everything is bad now. And when we're in that greater state of distress, unless again we kind of get that reassurance from the proximity of our partner, or that kind of comforting or soothing of our partner, we can go one of two ways. We can kind of further activate ourselves, and so we will continue to seek more proximity. So we may text them over and over, or call them over and over, or something I'm guilty of doing in the past is like I would check social media to see if they were on social media, to just like establish some contact. So that's when we're more greatly activated. And I didn't know how to represent this, so I used kind of like an arrow. Or we might deactivate. And so this is when we might start convincing ourselves to detach from this person and be like, you know what, Kate, clearly they don't care about me. We might start thinking about, ending the relationship, or thinking that they aren't as in it as we are. And that's to try and self-soothe and self-regulate by deactivating that attachment system. So it sounds and looks, and maybe I've made it sound more complicated than it actually is, but basically we're going through a possible threat. If it's not immediately satisfied, our attachment system gets activated, in that we do certain behaviors to seek proximity and closeness and to try and seek some sort of soothing. If that gets met, great, we're back to normal. If that doesn't get met, we're in greater distress, we're in this danger zone, and then we'll kind of go those one of two pathways. So some of the ways that this can show up in terms of like general categories of behavior would be preoccupation. And so this is where a lot of the thinking comes in. So we might find ourselves consistently thinking about the relationships, or overthinking what we may have said or what happened previously. And so in that, we're doing these assessments, where we're making assumptions about how the relationship is, how it's currently going. Proximity is another really big piece. And so emotional and physical proximity plays a major role in attachment. So this is where we might seek frequent closeness, like physical touch, wanting to spend a lot of time together, or emotional reassurance. And so, I think common day language is a lot through texting, or social media or whatever, but kind of getting that closeness and that proximity. And then we might also engage in protest behavior, which is where we feel like our needs aren't being met. We feel like that closeness isn't being reciprocated. So we might start to withdraw and become a lot more passive. We might start keeping score about who's more invested. We might engage in some manipulative behavior to try and like get that closeness or get that reaction out of our partner or out of whoever it is in this specific relationship. if you want to know what your attachment style is, or if you're hearing stuff about this and you're like, yeah, I think that fits, but I'm not exactly sure, I'm going to link, there's going to be a lot of links in the bio of this video, but I'm going to link a personality assessment that looks specifically at attachment styles. This one is actually referenced in this book. And so that one, there's options to do kind of a quicker version or a longer version where you can look at your attachment styles in all those different relationships. So, partners, parents, friends. Or in this actual book, if you do choose to get it, I think it's like a $30 book. There is kind of a simplified or condensed version of that assessment in here. And there's also a version where if you are in a relationship, you can kind of try to suss out what your partner's attachment style is. And I think understanding that is really, really helpful in learning what you need to do to adjust. And that's where the second question comes in of, can my attachment style change? There's various statistics around this. I've heard, or I've read research in some places that, people will change their attachment style like 4 times over a lifespan. And so it's not like every week we're going to be changing our attachment style, but we do have the capacity to change it. And especially if we're wanting to move towards that more secure base in the middle. It just takes initially that awareness piece of knowing what your current attachment style is or how you're relating to your partners, your friends, your family. It takes a lot of effort, and I know this very consciously for myself. And it takes committed relationships. So it also depends on the people that we surround ourselves with. We're over 10 minutes, but there's a lot of information in that, and I stumbled over my words a lot. So that is anxious or insecure attachment, and I will catch you guys on the next episode of Baldwin Breakdowns. Bye.